Hey, my fellow multidimensionals, it's Asia. It's a cold winter day, so I have my tea. We have the wood stove on. Well, it's not a wood stove, I think it's natural gas, but whew, it works for me. Wow, all right, so this is a great time of year to be doing this kind of work. The weekly message this week is about really looking into your shadow, and not from kind of the run-of-the-mill way that we usually do shadow work, of really looking at our wounds and all of that. It's somewhat related to that, but I feel like it's like an up-leveled version of shadow work. So the activation track of participants in my emergence experience were told this past week that their greatest ally at this time will be their shadow, because in their shadow lies the greatest aspects of themselves. And this makes sense from the standpoint of ascension specialists, intergalactic Peace Corps volunteers, starseed wayshowers that we all are, that these amazing aspects, this greater multidimensional self has been hidden in our shadow. It's the parts of ourselves that we've rejected. We were taught to reject, conditioned to reject. That became normalized from a very young age. I mean, I've done so much work with people at an individual level that there's a spectrum of inner child work to be done, and that inner child will usually present somewhere between the age of 4 to 7. That's usually the range. Now there are exceptions, like somebody the other day was at 3, something happened that created trauma in the psyche, and that part of them, you know, it's called a soul fragment, basically, you know, kind of ran and hid for cover in a higher dimensional reality, right? So it's kind of like calling them back. Now, trauma can be just being scolded by a parent, you know, no physical abuse, but just for those of us who are so sensitive because we're coming from higher dimensional realities in which there really is only unconditional love, it's very shocking to our system, right? So it doesn't take much for most starseeds for trauma. And of course, some of you have had full-blown, you agreed to have full-blown trauma. So I just want to preface it by saying that your understanding of the world and your perception and even that sensitivity in and of itself became a liability, you know. And I'll say I don't know, I'm looking for a qualifying year, and I'm being told there really isn't one. I was going to say maybe if you were born after 1990, but even for those of you who came on the planet more recently, you know, you've still walked into the same density and distortion. So this week, I think I'd like to ask all of us, myself included, to really feel into, wow, what is this amazingly powerful being, and several beings, right? Because at the oversoul level, we're many different things. But I'm seeing certain aspects present themselves, right? This past week, let's see, we had an Atlantean healer, right? Past life that stepped forward. We've had, an amazing medicine woman from what we call Peru today, from 6,000 years ago present. She's a butt kicker. She basically was telling her person to stop sitting on her medicine, which, you know, that's a whole nother reframe, right? Here we think, oh, you know, I've had these past lives, and we somewhat integrate them like, oh, okay, great, right? I have those skills and abilities. But isn't that an amazing shift to think like, wow, we're sitting on the work of our former selves in other lifetimes by not fully embracing our power, our leadership, our healing abilities, and putting them into play in the world, okay? Whoa. If you saw my video, the channeled message from the Andromedae in July of last year, that's where I finally was starting to come to terms with my own shadow around this, where I had made the decision not to become a public channeler and, you know, develop a big following, because I just felt like that was out of order, and it's people seeking information outside of themselves as opposed to really turning these channels on. And I realized that I think I had gone too far the other way, right? By not doing any channeling publicly. So whatever that is, you know, this week also, oh my gosh, this was amazing. A woman who basically, we were taken to the Ashtar command, and there is an Orion high priestess. She was like 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall, had amazing eyes, right? Like kind of a combo between those amazing alien eyes and cat eyes, just like a warrior priestess from the Orion system who has a very clear intent to end duality and end the wars and end all of the conflict that began in the Orion system. So that is basically this woman's higher self, and it was just striking to see how she was merging with her field, so that, you know, this ego identity personality can begin to evolve, expand, and adapt to a much greater identity, right? So yeah, it's another pyramid flip. It's another inversion. Like all of these things that we've made us feel kind of marginalized or strange or different, or like, what am I doing here? That's all being changed this year. And of course we have to do that work. No one can do it for us. So the first step is to really embrace your shadow and what lies there dormant, if you will. Although I can hear it, it sounds like a giant knocking at the door for a lot of you. Boom, boom, boom. You know, kind of come hell or high water, it's coming through, so you better surrender, right? So yeah, that's the message for this week. Let's all really feel into that more. For me personally, more recently, it's been allowing myself to surrender to this new mission work of stepping into leadership of interdimensionals, right? Humanity being one of them, but many different races of beings, coming into a totally different contribution, if you will, and understanding of my own personal identity. So, you know, I know many of you are going through the same thing, and you may be trying to hold it at bay. I mean, I've worked with people in the past who, I mean, have gotten into big resistance around their work, right? Wouldn't even show up for sessions that they'd paid for. So I understand the resistance and the shadow can be really strong because it doesn't feel safe. But let me tell you, every time I've channeled anything about this, the message is always the same. This lifetime, it is safe to be who you came to be. And all those other lifetimes, right, were in preparation. You honing your skills in a human avatar in the physical dimension on this planet in preparation for now. So don't be the bottleneck for all of your past selves, because guess what? They're gonna get pissed at you. Who would have thought? Of course, it totally makes sense, right? Yeah, so share with us in the comments, please. Share your journey. There's something about this shared journey. I'm just loving seeing everyone support one another in this format. And that's it. That's it for this week. Make friends with your shadow, because the greatest part of yourself resides there. Much love to you all.